question for you about cars.
Okay.
So I bought a car today.
Mm-hmm.
It's a salvage title. It had hail damage on the car body. I was wondering if you had experience doing body work with hail damage and how to make it look nice.
I don't have like a ton of experience with hail damage per se, but as far as salvage cars, yeah, if they're smashed up in the front or the rear or on the side, a lot of times what we'll do is kind of take things apart, maybe the front bumper, take that off, or a door or something like that, just to make sure that and see what needs to be replaced or not. As far as hail damage, a lot of times what we'll do is replace panels. So a fender, a hood, but for example, like a trunk lid too, we'll just replace those with new or a used part. If it's a different color, that used part, then we'll just we'll scuff it up and then paint it. For like the roof, typically what we'll do with the roof is we will take off what's called the headliner, the inside part of the car, and then you actually use a hammer and a metal dowel, kind of a metal piece of block or what have you, so to speak, and then we'll actually kind of put that on one side and then hammer it so it kind of smooths it out. It ruins the paint, but when you're done, you just repaint as well. Also, for any like small imperfections or dents, you might use like a Bondo agent and fill those dents with that. And then once that's done, then you paint it and get it to match the car.
Seems pretty simple. Is it pretty costly though?
Oh yeah, it's pretty expensive. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's very labor intensive, especially with several dents. Like a hood, for example, you could buy a used one for maybe $125. And then same thing with the trunk lid, probably about $125. The fenders maybe $70 a piece, and then probably $700 to fix the hail on the roof.
Did you say $700?
$700 to fix the hail on the roof. Yep. Yeah.
So you're saying the hood and the front, the back trunk are cheaper to replace if you find it used rather than brand new, and it wouldn't be like technically fixed?
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Right. You wouldn't actually fix them because it would be a lot of labor hours, or a lot of work to actually try to fix every single little dent. It's typically cheaper to go to a salvage yard where they have other cars that are broken down or what have you, and they, remove the hood or the trunk that's not damaged, and then you just paint it to match it. So that's a lot cheaper doing it that way than it would be, to try to fix every little dent. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got that. So you mean like I could buy it wherever, put it on there and paint, and how much would that cost, do you think?
Well, it depends. If we're talking about just the hood,
the hood,
to match the fenders and the doors and the bumper, I would say probably in the range of $800 or so.
Oh, so the paint work is expensive?
The paint itself
like?
is very expensive. Oh yeah, definitely. It's not like your latex paint in the house. So yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Sure.
And what gets really expensive is the labor and all the prep. For example, like on the fenders, underneath the fenders you have what's called a fender liner, which protects the fenders from rocks and mud from the tires. So you have to take that off, and then you have to tape it off, and then you have to protect that from, you don't want to paint the wheels, what's called overspray. So you have to cover those. It's quite a process. Same thing with like the doors. You have trim, they call it on the doors. You might have like chrome trim or something like that. All has to come out. The windows have to come out. The door handles have to come out. And then when you do that, you have holes in the door. And you also have to take the door trim off from the inside, or the door panel. You have to take it off because then you have to go inside and you have to cover that with tape, those holes from the door handles. Because if you don't, then you're going to end up painting inside the door, and you don't want to do that, obviously. It'll cause problems. Well, it's very labor intensive. A lot of labor. Also, there's a lot of steps just to the painting. First, you have to, for example, if it's a used part, you have what's called clear coat on the top. You have to scuff that. You have to use something to basically to scratch it out. And you put these little scratches in there so that way the paint sticks in to the old paint, so to speak. But first, actually, to back up a little bit, you use primer. You prime it, then you use colored paint, and then you use the clear coat. And there are several applications or coats of that, of each. And then in between those, you're also cleaning with like a tack cloth to clean it off, to make sure that no dust is on there. Because then if you have dust in there, you're going to have bumps and it won't look good. And then when you're done with the clear coat and that dries, you actually have to sand it, believe it or not. You have to use a 1500 grit sandpaper. So you sand it to sand any little imperfections out, or little dust things that got on there. You sand that out. Well, when you sand it and you wash it, then you have scratches all over. So then what you have to do is you have to buff it with a buffer and buffing compound or stuff. And then that, after you do that, that's what makes it shiny again. And then wash it, clean it and stuff.
Oh,
A lot of work.
Wow, so that's the reason why when I hit a deer, I think it was last year sometime, I was lucky the insurance covered most of it because I only had to pay like the $500 deductible. So altogether it was like $3,000 just for the hood and the bumper, I think. It was like this little crack on the bumper, and it was all put in, the hood was all knocked in, so it cost like $3,000. So no wonder the paint and all that prep is a lot of work, and it took like a week to get back. So that's true. So that makes sense as to why it took so long. Oh, and then for insurance, so say you replace it with a new hood. So like say hail damage happened to my hood, and and I claim it on my insurance and say, oh, this hail damage happened because I can't replace it myself. Would they get a new hood rather than a used one? Like you were saying, like an old what was that?
A used one?
Or like one that doesn't have hail damage or something. Like for insurance reasons, maybe like let's say they leave it out in the back and it doesn't have much hail damage, but in the front the hood is more visible there. So the trunk's fine, but the hood needs to be replaced. So would I tell the insurance company, I got hit by hail, it happened here for some reason, could I, do that, make a claim just on the hood on the hail damage, and would it be covered or not?
Right, so if you were to replace the hood, for example, only with a new one or a used one, and then later at some point you got into hail again, and it got damaged again. Would the insurance company cover that? Let's see. Probably you just have to. You'll have to prove that you got a new one by either maybe pictures or receipts, um, or invoice, showing that you did replace it. And they should, they should fix it for you. It shouldn't be a big deal. And yes, insurance companies do typically have records of what happened, why it was salvaged, the kind of damage. So that way they're not paying twice for the same kind of damage.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about.
Right. Yeah, so you can't, it's tough to trick an insurance company, but if you're being honest and that you have a picture of the new hood, or you have receipts or an invoice saying it was replaced on this date, what have you, then it should be fine, yeah. If something were to happen again, they should be able to reimburse you for that.
Okay. So if you just leave the damage and you just don't take care of it, is it, do you save much more by buying a new hood plus the paint and the whole process you would save on that?
Right. I mean, yeah, you certainly would, but it depends. If you don't mind, if it's pretty minimal damage, and only you can really tell under the right light and conditions, it might not be worth doing anything about it. If it were me, and I was trying to save money, I guess I would just leave it. But if it's, for example, I mean, we don't have a lot of hail around here anymore. But for example, if you were to drive and you hit a deer with that hail damaged hood, and they know about the hail, what they might do is they might just take a little bit of money off as far as what they're willing to pay the body shop. Instead of $3,000 for the that they would pay, they may only pay $2,800, for example. And you'd be, on the hook. You'd have to pay for that extra $200, so to speak, to get it fixed.
Okay, got that. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. That's very clear. Thank you so much.
Sure, you're welcome. How do you say thank you?
Thank you.